What's up, guys? Today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the relaunch of the Hummer brand as a GMC and an all-electric vehicle. So I hope you guys are ready to see what I've got to say. Okay, so recently General Motors announced that it's going to be bringing back the Hummer nameplates as a GMC, and I think they're going to be making what they said was a Hummer pickup truck and then the Hummer SUV. So I know that there's the HMX concept that's been circulating for a little bit, and people are bringing that back up again now, and I think that concept debuted or got rendered at least in like the late 2000s, so that's sort of irrelevant, and the HMX name is probably irrelevant too, but just thought I would throw that up there. Though it is interesting that they're committed essentially to the pickup truck. As far as I can tell, most sources have confirmed the pickup truck, whereas only a couple have said, yeah, it seems like there'd be an SUV in the process afterwards, which is interesting to me, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Anyway, that's the quick rundown, quick synopsis. It's going to be the GMC Hummer. They're not relaunching the nameplate as a Hummer like it was previously. They're going to be making it a GMC, I'm assuming for capital intensive reasons. Again, we'll get into that in a second. Okay, so it seems like the main business strategy of relaunching this new Hummer brand is that you get the Hummer name without the gas guzzling, and then therefore there could be like less haters, I guess. So their goal is to capture their target market that enjoys the big SUV known as Hummer while maintaining that clean image. People can't hate on as much as the previous generation, all that stuff. That seems like, in theory, a good business plan. The only thing I'll say to that is it seems like it would work, but I hope they aren't aiming at the original Hummer target market, which I know was a lot of people who were actually invested in the fact that it was a vehicle of excess. They liked that aspect of it. Actually, you wouldn't buy the Hummer in the first place if you didn't enjoy the fact that it was a vehicle of excess. You bought it to be noticed, you wanted to be seen, and you wanted that sort of do anything, be anywhere type of SUV, type of truck. If I could even call it an SUV, it's kind of beyond an SUV, and that's why they liked it. So I hope they're not trying to target that exact same demographic, because that demographic of people either doesn't care that it's electric, that's not going to be a big thing for them, or they're actually going to be upset that it's electric. A lot of those people wanted the gas guzzling, old school, body on frame, giant SUV. And so I feel like they have the potential to lose that entire demographic in the process. That being said, I wonder if a lot of those old Hummer buyers would still want a new one regardless of whether it's electric or gas. I actually think they'll be able to find a new demographic that's very dissimilar to its old one. A lot of trendsetters and people who are looking for alternative fuel vehicles could be turning to Hummer, whereas in the past I would say that Hummer buyers weren't necessarily at the forefront of the technology age, though I would, I guess, call them trendsetters in the sense that their vehicle stands out. So even though I think that this new Hummer is going to have kind of a hard time capturing that old demographic that it had, I think that it will at least find its way with a new one that can associate it with being all clean, and or they might be able to poach some of the people that bought the old Hummer and just more like the look and feel of it and didn't care about the powertrain. Okay, moving on to the name as a GMC. I think this is one of my favorite things to pick apart, and I'm super curious to see your guys' thoughts on this. It is probably the smartest. Oh, I got something in my mouth. Naming the new Hummer as a GMC is probably the smartest thing that they could do from a business standpoint. It's extremely capital intensive to start a new brand. As you guys see in my Genesis video, I talk about how difficult that is. Tesla struggled out the bando, and they're an alternative fuel vehicle maker. So it would be difficult for General Motors, even as big as it is, to be bringing this brand new, you can call it brand new brand again, into the American public. So to label it as a GMC makes sense. From a business standpoint, I get it. You know, from a bean counter's perspective. The only thing I'll say about that, though, is that you might lose some of that Hummer brand name recognition that they had in like the mid 2000s because it was the Hummer. And I think part of that's going to be lost in the fact that this is now a GMC. I don't know if we're supposed to call it the GMC Hummer, the Hummer GMC something, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be having GMC logos on the grill and sides, and then Hummer's the nameplate. So I think that that could decrease its popularity in the fact that ultimately you're driving a GMC pickup truck that's electric, and the Hummer name to me seems potentially more of a marketing ploy to get me into that truck. And I think whether it will turn out to be just a marketing ploy or something actually worthwhile will depend on the styling and capability of the truck. So Hummers were known for being bold and brash and in your face, and if they can't match that with the styling, styling, then obviously I'm just an electric GMC Sierra, right? That's just what it is. And if it can't match the off-roading prowess of the old one, which I suppose wasn't as good as it looked, I guess it had more bark than bite in the old Hummer. I think that's going to be extremely important from a styling perspective if they can make it not just me stepping into an electric GMC that happens to have the Hummer name, and that's why I'm so invested in getting into it. I guess either way, it is smart to name it Hummer if it gets people into it, regardless of whether it is truly a Hummer at heart or not. Like Ford might be realizing with the Mustang Mach-E here, using the name to generate sales could dilute what it means to people, and it could dilute the status symbol of having that. I'm not going to get too much into the Mach-E and Mustang. That's just a whole nother story for a different day, but that's part of why I would be a little bit worried about naming it a GMC. Another thing to point out, GMC and Hummer have never meant the same thing. Hummer has really never meant the same thing as any other car manufacturer ever. And Hummer has never been a nameplate before. It's always been a brand, a standalone brand. So this is totally uncharted territory for that name, and I'm very curious to see how it's going to turn out, as those are my predictions. So like I said earlier, most of the rumors are that they're actually making a pickup first, which is extremely weird to me, and then that SUV possibility would be coming second. Another thing that people close to the project say are that these Hummers are supposed to be sold in small numbers to off-road enthusiasts. So that also to me was interesting that they're not trying to mass market this. That's what I would be going for right now in electrification if I had the budget and R&D hours to do it, which out of all the manufacturers, GM has some of the most, starting all the way back with the EV1. Then they moved to, Volt, Bolt. I think they had an electric Spark, that kind of thing. So they have tons of experience in electrification, and I think that cost to do so is falling greatly, especially for that company in particular. So it's weird that they seem to be targeting a higher clientele. Not with Hummers specifically. Hummers are a premium brand. They are allowed to charge a premium, especially with electric technology, so I understand that. The only thing is, it's just interesting to me that GM has chosen to revive Hummer instead of bringing just an electric, either GMC or even Chevy, to be honest. A good small Chevy SUV that's electric would do the trick, like an electric Blazer for some reason, but a standalone model line, because people want everyone to know that it's an electric vehicle. So, standalone nameplate, not the Blazer, not a gas Blazer and an electric Blazer, just an electric SUV, because I think that I understand that most of the profits in the auto industry are made on not only SUVs, but especially the luxury segment. So that's kind of the best of both worlds. It's just strange to me that it's one of the few manufacturers with the ability to mass market a new electric SUV, and they chose to not only not mass market it, but not even market it at the level of what seems to be like a Tesla Model X to me. It seems like it's almost like an exclusive thing, like you might have to sign up for this. So I understand that pickup trucks are important, and I do think they're going to be necessary to relaunch the nameplate to a degree. I just don't think they should have started with the pickup, because no one thinks of a pickup truck when they think of the Hummer. I think the H2, it was a pickup at some point in some form where you could like take the top off the back or something. I can't remember. But I do know that the H3 came in a pickup truck form. I never see them anywhere, but they're out there at some degree. But no one thinks of a pickup truck when you think of Hummer. Me personally, I think of a giant yellow Hummer H2 when I think of the nameplate Hummer. And so I think it's just odd for them to start with the pickup truck and not start with what people know, with what people associate with the brand. It's important to draw the association from the old Hummer to the new one, because you're starting this new nameplate as a GMC, and you need that association for you to be able to charge that higher price and for people to get that recognition and that status from the car. It's just weird that you wouldn't start with your bread and butter, especially considering you want to get the most attention to this new, I guess, nameplate. I won't call it a brand because it isn't anymore, but you want to get the most attention to this model. You should start with the vehicle that's going to get you the most attention. That's just my thoughts on that. Let's focus on this idea of off-road enthusiasts. So, of course, GM is claiming, we're going to sell them in small volume to these off-road enthusiasts. I think personally that's BS. They are probably going to try and sell them in small volume, but off-roading enthusiasts is just, I would love to know what their definition of off-roading enthusiasts are. I'm sure it doesn't actually mean off-roading enthusiasts. It's the same thing as like most Jeep Wranglers aren't going to see anything worse than snow in their whole life. They're just pavement cruisers. And there's, I guess, nothing against that. It's just Wranglers are sold to off-roading enthusiasts. Or they're supposed to be for off-roading enthusiasts. So I'm thinking whether we're defining the term off-roading enthusiasts very loosely here, especially considering there haven't been many electric off-roading vehicles up to this point. And so I don't know that the term off-roading enthusiasm and electricity mash well together yet. I'm not saying they can in the future. I'm just yet. I don't think they go together well. And I don't think that Hummer of all is going to be the one to start that. I think it would probably be Mercedes with the G-Wagon, Land Rover, or potentially Jeep with the Wrangler to start the electric off-road craze. It certainly isn't going to be Hummer. So that's an interesting term to use for the clientele for this new Hummer, but I wouldn't take it too much to heart. I would take it with a grain of salt because I don't really know what that means, and I just think it means off-roading enthusiasts are the people who are just willing to shell out the cash, and people who want the image of tough and capable and go anywhere, but also potentially some of that green side of things. We're going to see how that plays out. But the Hummer is never going to be going off-road. A couple of them will see off-road duty, but ultimately the main buyer is just somebody who wants to pay the money for the Hummer. Which brings me to my next point, that price is going to be a pretty lofty number according to many of the sources around. Like I mentioned earlier, as a Hummer, I think that's the correct strategy here because Hummers were never known to be cheap or like run-of-the-mill products. It was unique and bold, and it was allowed to charge a higher price premium because of all of those features. And I do think that will translate well to the new Hummer, especially even as a GMC, because GMC tends to charge a higher price, even versus their Chevy counterparts. So I do think that's the right idea for the Hummer nameplate, and that would be consistent with what they had done in the past anyway, so that would make sense. It'd be familiar to the buying public. I'm just upset that GM isn't using all of its experience and history in electrification to bring a mass marketable SUV to ultimately Chevy. That's what I would love to see. I understand it's not nearly as profitable as Hummer, and from a business perspective, you gotta hit Hummer hard because the profit margins on every vehicle sold are gonna be through the roof, and you're bringing back the American icon, so it's awesome for them. I would love to see some of that technology trickle down to other models like I've been saying. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below about whether you think this is going to succeed or not, and whether you think maybe they're going to migrate the name back to its own brand at some point. But I guess only time will tell, as we're going to see if this new Hummer model from GMC is going to do anything good. So with that said, have a good day. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys at the next video.